Hello and welcome to Watching Code Office Hours. This is session number 80. The purpose of these office hours is to help you as you're going through anything on watchingcode.com. So if you're stuck with anything in particular about JavaScript, you can go ahead and ask. Um, and the way it works is pretty simple. You can just call into the video chat and then you can ask the question directly and I'll be happy to help you out. So the document I'm looking at right now and I'm sharing on my screen, you can find this in the YouTube live stream description. So below the video, there will be a link to it. And then if you have a question, you'll need to call in, and the link to call in is right here. I've highlighted it right here. So if you don't have this document open and you have a question, then you want to open it up. It's linked in the YouTube live stream underneath the video player. So a couple announcements before we continue. First is join the Facebook group to get information about upcoming sessions in case there are any schedule changes, announcements, stuff like that. I pretty much never send emails, so it's the only way to keep in touch and find new stuff. New stuff. We don't have anything new released the last week. I sent out an email about the 2 new videos in the underscore series, but I told you about that last week too. This week I'm working on the next set of videos in that series. So working on the next set of videos in the underscore series. So that means you'll probably see them land maybe a week or so from today would be a good estimate. So those are all the announcements I have. So after this, we just go into open questions. So I'll just call on students and then see what questions they have and we'll just go from there. So this is the time you'll want to call in if you haven't yet. All right. Erica, you want to start us off?
Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that last week I know I talked about bind and this. Here, let me share my screen too. And okay, so on the to-do MVC last week, I was talking about in bind events, we were focusing a lot on this create.bind and what this was. So I wanted to clarify that in the parentheses, this was actually referring to the app object. Is that correct?
What line are you talking about?
On line 61.
61.
Here, I'll highlight.
Can you walk me through the process about how you can tell what it is?
Okay, yeah. So for line 61, basically is saying for the callback function of which is going to be the create method on line 140. We are calling for the create method on line 140, and because it's a callback function, it's not directly on the basically I have to call on the app object to get to the create method, which is the callback function.
Well, let's start with a simpler question that's more like a prerequisite to what we're talking about right now, which is what is this inside of bind events and how do you figure that out?
So I ran the debugger to figure that out, and I think I still have it pulled up.
Well, if you look at the cheat sheet, for example, what case are we talking about and why? How do you identify that?
See if I had the. So should I pull up the cheat sheet?
Sure. It's right there. Yep.
So I think it's case 4 because we're using the bind method. So we're explicitly setting the value.
Well, I'm asking though, what is the value of this inside of bind events?
Oh, it's inside the app object.
Okay, so what case is that?
2.
2. How can you tell? Can you show me why?
Let's see. Pull back up.
Can you come in plus like maybe twice?
Oh, on
Sublime.
Here?
In Sublime.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's good, yeah. Okay, so let's imagine that there was this, and it could show up anywhere between line 56 to 69. Okay?
Okay.
So if I just typed console log this anywhere, so you're saying it would be the app object. Why?
So because it's to the left of create. So the left of create would be the app object because create is a method on the app object.
That's a bit circular reasoning. You're saying this must be app because create is on app. But what if someone had a typo? Right, like if you go back to the cheat sheet, the key thing with all of these cases is you need to understand or at least identify for any given function, if you want to know what this is inside of that function. So in this example, we want to know what is this inside of my method. And that's very kind of analogous to what is this inside of bind events. You see the parallels there? You want to see the only way you can answer that question is you have to see how my method or bind events was called. So you need to find where it was called, and that will tell you. Right, so the left of the dot only applies because when you call my method in the last line in case 2, the left of the dot is my object. So then this inside of my method will be my object.
So we're looking at where it was called from.
Right. So basically you can't explain what this is inside of bind events until you figure out show me where bind events was called. So first of all, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so, because when I tried to where did I already exit out of it? When I did try to call, or when I did set the breakpoint, it did show me in the, I think it was, or in the watch in the call stack, like it showed me where this was. So when I ran it and hit enter, it showed me this was app object, which had the this dot create, which is why I said this dot create was from the app object.
Right, but without the debugger though, how would you be able to tell you with like only the cheat sheet? I think the debugger is good for verifying that your assumptions are true. Like maybe you look at the cheat sheet and then you have a hypothesis about what it is, and then you want to test the hypothesis. The debugger is kind of the moment of truth for you to test that. But I think it's good to have an idea of what it is before you do that. Wait, can you close the triangle on this and scroll up a little bit? Scroll up a little bit. Can you go open the call stack? So here, when you see, can you click on create? Okay. This doesn't really tell you. Oh yeah, because this was dispatched by an event. Put a breakpoint inside of bind events. Just the first
Yeah.
line. Yeah. And
Okay.
now refresh. Okay. So can you just show me in the code where bind events was called?
Um,
A good way to do this
oh, so
is,
like in the new to do, yeah.
no, it's not going to be there. It's going to be in the, it's going to be somewhere else in the source code. Where is the bind events method called? Line 55. This method called.
Right here.
No, the bind events, not bind.
Oh, line 55, bind events.
Yeah, where is that method called? It has to be called somewhere, right? Otherwise the code will never run.
Oh, and init.
In init. So now you know why it's case 2, because if you want to know what this is inside of bind events, it's whatever is to the left of the dot, right? And it's this.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
But now you have to know, well, what is this inside of init? Then you need to find out where init was called, right? So then just from looking at this, you can't tell. You need to take that next step and be like, okay, well, this, whatever's to the left of the dot is whatever this is inside of init. So where is init called? Can you tell me where init? Show me where init is called. Not there.
Hold on. I have that. At the very
Right.
end.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
and
it's app.
app.init.
Right. So this is a definite case 2 where it's very obvious, right? This inside of init will be whatever's to the left of the dot. Well, it's app very clearly. So now you know this inside of init is app. So when you go back to init and you see this dot bind events, it's the same thing as app dot bind events. So then if you use the left of the dot rule, then this inside of bind events is also app.
So you have to find the trail, basically.
Yep. But the rules are the same simple rules that you've always known. But yeah, just an extra layer of yeah. Does that make sense? So now you know anywhere you see this inside of bind events, it's going to be, what is it going to be?
It's going to be app.
App, right. So scroll down to bind events. And so hover on this everywhere in bind events. It's the same everywhere, right?
Yeah. Got it. I see. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to go through that because I felt like it wasn't.
Yeah, that makes way more sense to me now. See, like the trail of how, even though I could see it from just looking at like the watch or the call stack or whatever, the scope, like seeing the actual trail from seeing bind events here, and then where bind events is called in init, and then where init is called, it's all app.
Right, and the debugger is really good for verification.
Right.
So if you're wondering like, oh, like, am I right? Well, you can answer that quite easily. But I think it's, if you're programming and studying, what you really want to do is develop really good hypotheses to the point where you're always right. And then the debugger, like, you don't really need to do the verification step so much because you trust your instincts. It becomes instinctual. If you just use the debugger like to actually find out what it is, that doesn't give you a good. If you don't have the debugger, you're screwed, right?
Pretty much.
Or like if someone asks you about it, it's hard to, or even if you get the answer, it's hard to explain why that's the answer.
Yeah.
Like, it's difficult to explain why the debugger is telling you that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Was there did you have another question with the bind portion in particular?
No,
function dot bind.
No, that was it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
figure out.
one thing that you can do is, so I think the key thing here is that the what will tell you this inside of any given function is, well, to answer that question, you need to know how it was called. Like that's the pivotal part that will give you the answer. If you don't know how it was called, then you have no basis for thinking about what the value of this is. So when you're wondering, what is this inside of this function, you need to go look to how it was called, and then once you see that, then you'll know. And this example is a little more complicated because when you look at how it was called, you got another this, right? So then you
Right.
have to look at, okay, how is this that this other function called, and then it will kind of cascade down.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, and have the cheat sheet handy. I think what is a really good test for everyone is for any given, whenever you see this anywhere, if I were to ask you what case is it and why, you'd be able to explain.
Okay.
So, because it's got to be one of those. So, um, yeah. I mean, there's one caveat that um, it has to be one of those in any JavaScript function. If you are wondering about what this is inside of like add event listener, which is like a browser API, and there's no like source code for that function in JavaScript, then you can't answer that question. But if there's any JavaScript if you're looking at a function and you can see the source code, you can always answer the question about what this is, and you could apply one of the cases to it.
Okay. Cool. If we don't have anything later after this, would you give me like a quiz on another type of case situation?
Sure.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, that's a good idea. And maybe we can just stick with the same application. Like you can just open it up, and then I'll just like randomly choose a line and then
Okay.
say, what is it? What case
That'd
is
be good.
it? Like, okay.
Thank you.
So Nefer didn't have any questions. Um, Adil, are you there?
Hi, yes, hi.
Hey.
Yes, I didn't have any questions either. I was just been beginning. I'm just reading through the jQuery code and just trying to get comfortable with reading code that is not tutorial based or anything I've written. So I found that it is helping reduce a lot of the intimidation that I've had previously. So I'm trying to get used to that, and I'm trying to recognize things that I've seen from the To-Do app before, and trying to translate concepts across, and just trying to follow the logic, the flow of the code. So from where it gets ready to be, when init is first called, and then it runs through the various. There's a bind event. It sets up the store in a utility object, and so there's quite a few things that I don't quite understand, like the router, but I think I will get to those things much later. But it's just getting familiar with the code, and and just trying not to be taken aback by this being a foreign thing. So and next to that, really, I did also watch the trailers to the Underscore videos, and as they're the only out of sequence videos I'm okay to watch. So I think that actually just reinforced what I'm doing at the moment, is just to try and comprehend and try and reduce the ambiguity, any fuzziness at an earlier stage, rather than letting it sort of push it towards a later stage and say, oh, I'll worry about it then. So yeah, I've been spending a little bit more time just trying to read and comprehend, and so it's quite challenging, but yeah, I'm just sticking with it, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds great. Which video are you in the reading series on To-Do MVC, jQuery?
I've not yet started the first one. As the instruction said, just spend a minimum of a couple of hours going through the code. So that's basically where I'm at, and just trying to follow that. And then once I'm familiar with a few of the things, I think just getting my head around things like the new to do. I'm guessing that's pointing towards an element on the DOM, and then the key up is releasing a key event. So when that happens on that particular new to do ID element, then that following function, that create method, will be called. So yeah, it's just really trying to follow the logic of that, really, and then going to the create method to see how that actually creates a new to do with the ID from the utilities object, along with the to do itself and the completed status. So that makes a bit more sense.
Cool, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for dropping in, and keep up the great work. Yeah, and I think the whole point of having you look at it beforehand is to get a sense of that application before you watch the videos. I think it's really helpful just so you get some context. But it's also to compare and contrast the way you're approaching it now versus the way you'll see me approach it in the video, so you can kind of compare and contrast the different ways of reading. There are a lot of subtleties in that can make you better or worse at reading code, and so I hope that you'll see some of those things as you watch the videos. But it's really good to have that initial experience that you're going through now, so you can have that something to compare it to.
Yeah, absolutely. And just really confronting that intimidation factor is quite a big thing, because when it comes to looking at other code written by other, looking at GitHub, for example, it can be quite intimidating. So this is really the first time I'm really trying to confront that. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and what will happen, all the students kind of go through a very similar process where it is intimidating at the beginning, but by the end, and especially as you review it a little bit more, it becomes you'll look at it, you'll look back on it in the future, and it will seem quite simple and rudimentary. So that's something to look forward to, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, indeed.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing, Adil, and thanks for dropping by. If you do have any questions that pop up as you are watching and listening in, just let me know, and I'll be happy to help out.
Super. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so we have John next. John, you there?
Yeah, hey.
Hey.
So I just started the testing section. I just kind of had an overall question. I don't know if you answer it later on, but I'm just wondering, like, if we're supposed to be kind of rethinking about how we program completely. Like, are we supposed to just be testing every single function that we program, or are we supposed to be doing like comments first and kind of like sketching out methods and stuff like that, and then programming from there? Like, I'm kind of confused on like what the real world application is, and like workflow is for like professional developers using test-driven development.
Yeah,
Like where you would use it, where you wouldn't use it.
right. Yeah, it's a good question. There are a lot of opinions on this, and I think it's because the answer is not clear. Even if you ask one person, they'll tell you different things on depending on what project they're looking at. So let me give you a couple of examples. So if you are writing software for SpaceX that's going to launch rockets, you probably want a lot of tests, right?
Hmm.
Because otherwise there's catastrophic consequences. So that would be a situation where you probably want to have a lot of tests, maybe veer on the side of too many, and that's maybe you want to just have that that kind of lean towards that side. If you're a startup with no customers, maybe you don't care that much, and maybe you've been trying to build a bunch of products, trying to get customers, and you're building like really minimal things just to see what sticks, and you've done like 10 of them in the last 3 months. You probably don't need to write tests because you're probably going to throw your code away anyway, right? Another example is if you're writing functions that are very well understood and don't change over time, like the way someone expects a for each to work or a reduce to work is very much known and probably won't change. So your requirements are very kind of set in stone, and so you can write really robust tests for it. And you'll find like in the reduce section, for example, when you have a lot of requirements, the tests actually make it a little bit faster, I think, to write code, because as you add new features to it, starting from nothing, and you start adding stuff, it makes sure that you don't regress and accidentally break things that used to work. So that would be a really good candidate place to write tests. In another example, you might be writing a utility library that is meant to handle arrays, but you don't really know how you want the API to work yet. And so it becomes hard to write tests because you don't even know your tests are not yet solidified in your mind because the requirements aren't solidified in your mind. And so maybe that's something you would add later. Right. And I think that's why you see so many opinions, because it really depends.
Okay.
But I think one thing that is important is that I think what's important is, given the project you're working on, given the work, like another example where I think where tests would be really important is if people might die. So with medical devices, for example, you almost have a moral imperative to write tests, and really good ones, or with like financial stuff, because you could screw up people's bank accounts. But then for like if you work at Snapchat, who well, I guess that matters too because of privacy and stuff. But let's say you work on something really dumb. Well, it doesn't matter really, right? So I think because you can have so many different situations, you need to know that it exists. You need to understand how it works, and that's kind of the baseline. And once you do that, then you can decide I'll use it or not.
Okay.
Right.
Because I thought it was more experienced. I thought it was like a more experienced skill to know like when to write tests and when not to.
Right. Yeah, it is. But I think first you need to know how they work at all. And I think that was the point. I wasn't trying to teach you all when to use it in every situation. It was just to explain that they exist, and they're really good for teaching because they force you to be very granular and for you to test your assumptions immediately. So in a teaching sense, they're really good. And in the examples that we look at, they're really good too, and they make a lot of sense to write tests because the requirements are very well understood. They don't change. And in a lot of ways, I think it makes it easier because a lot of the requirements are quite subtle. So for example, like with the behavior on holes in arrays, it's very easy to break that without realizing it. So if you change your code and you're worried that you're going to break that, what if you don't have tests, what you actually have to do is you have to manually, you probably have a bunch of examples that you have to manually run every single time. That's not ideal. So people just don't do that, and then the software breaks. So so
that makes sense.
So it depends on the situation, I guess. I guess that's not a satisfying answer, but it depends. And then within that, there are a lot of styles of testing. Like some people like to have every line of code tested. I think that's a little bit too much. So they're like test coverage tools you can run to see like, do you have 100% coverage, or like, you know, it basically looks to see every line of code is run inside your tests. And then even within that, you know, some people are like, you have to have like, you know, 100%. I think that's overkill. I think that it's important. It's really important to test the things that really matter. And so I don't know what percent that is. And there are also things like I think don't need to be tested as much. So for example, like UI toggle states, like stuff like that. You could test that for sure, you know, definitely can. But you know, the benefit of testing that is not so much. It's not as much as testing the things that are like, you know, when you add a to-do, it works, right? And that you can run assertions on the arrays. You don't have to run assertions on the DOM. And so some people have different opinions on like, oh, like I don't want to test stuff in the DOM, or some people like to do that a lot. And it really just, there are a lot of opinions. Yeah, I think I tend to err on the side of, I mean, if it makes sense to do it, then do it. If it doesn't, then it doesn't matter so much, and don't be OCD about it. But you'll see a lot of opinions and all over the place on it.
All right, cool, thanks.
Yeah, but yeah, the important thing is, you know, it exists, and it's in your arsenal of things you can use. Right? 'Cause you can see, cool. you may or may not need to use it. And then finally, it's really important for reading code, because a lot of code bases are tested. So if you want to understand what is happening in those tests, you need to have some sense of how testing works, and you have to be able to debug them and stuff. Right. So you'll see that in Accounting.js. You'll see that with the underscore series as well.
Okay, so those, I haven't gotten there yet, but do those all use like tests in their?
They do.
Like in their GitHub code.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Right. So if you want to be able to read stuff, you have to understand it.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Good question. I think those are all the questions for people that have called in. I'll take a look at a real quick look at the Facebook and the live stream if there are any questions there. No questions on Facebook, but it looks like there is a question on the live stream. So I'll share that. Okay. So Periphery asked, I'm considering joining Premium. Do you go over any framework, or is that not part of your scope? Just assume no. The reason I'm giving you such an unfulfilling answer is because Watching Code is not a place where you learn any specific tool. It's a place to get better at programming. And getting good at programming and learning frameworks are two separate things. They can overlap, but not, they're not really, learning frameworks is not really, is a non-goal. So if we happen to do it, it's because it's just coincidence. It's not because I intend to teach you A, B, C, D frameworks. That's not the point. So the unsatisfying answer, Periphery, is just assume no. And I think, you'll have the right expectations. All right, so I guess that is it for the people that have called in. So I'll end the broadcast a little early. As usual, we do have usually just off. Oh wait, Erica wanted me to quiz her. Erica, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so can you share your screen?
Yeah. Sorry. Here we go. Okay.
Okay, so let's scroll to the very top, and then we'll just like kind of go down, and I'll
All right.
just randomly pick things.
All right.
We can scroll to the very top and just stay there. What is this in line 14?
14.
Just because this is not used doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It still has a value. So I'm not referring to any usage of it. I'm just saying I know it's in the background. What is that?
Let's see. Line 14. It's a weird line. Of course you would pick that.
You could rephrase it, which is, what is this inside of the UUID method?
Okay.
Which means it could be anywhere from line 14 through 26.
Okay. This is util.
Why?
Because.
Well, can you show me how it was called? Remember, that's the key.
So
how is UUID called?
It was called within UUID, right? So
no. I don't see the open and close parentheses. There you go.
Line 148, which is the create method.
Okay.
And the create method. So I have to follow the trail, right?
You tell me.
I think I do.
Maybe, maybe not. You can refer to the cheat sheet. I think that would be helpful. There's no. You can just leave it open and refer to it as needed.
Okay. Let's see. I think I have it open.
Remember the focal point is, how was UUID called?
Give it my object.method. So I go back to right here, object to the left. So right here, it shows me that it was the util object.
Okay, so what case is that?
That's case 2.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Good work. Okay,
Cool.
so let's scroll back to the top and scroll down such that line 28 is at the very top.
Okay.
Um, let's see. Scroll down so bind events is at the top, 55. Okay, so in line 60, 60, 60, we're setting up an event listener. So on key up, whenever there's a key up on the new to do input, then this .create will run. When, like, let's pretend I just hit a key up on the new to do input, and then this .create runs. What is this inside of when this create runs on the key up event? What is this inside of the create method?
What is this inside of the create method?
On the when the key up event happens. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm phrasing that clearly.
I think you're asking if it's the input of new to do.
No, so I'm saying when, so let's pretend that I just had a key up event happen on new to do. Whenever that event happens, this .create is going to run, right?
Right.
So inside create, in that example, what will this be?
App.
Why?
The app object. Because if we look at where bind event operates, which is in a init, and we look at where a init operates, which is at the bottom, we can see to the left that it is on the app object.
But what makes so that's why this
Oh,
inside of bind
why?
events. Yeah, so you just explain why this inside of bind events is equal to the app object. But why is this inside of create whenever the key up event happens? Why is this inside of create the app object? What case are we looking at there?
See. I'm not sure which this you're talking about.
Yeah,
so on line 60?
Yeah, so on line 60, we're basically saying whenever a key up event happens, run this .create.
Right.
Right. But we're saying run this create .bind this.
Uh-huh.
So that returns a new function, right?
Right. Because we're
inside of
it.
that function. So when that function runs, what is this inside of that function? So if you highlight, so if you, yeah, no, inside of this .create bind this.
Oh, inside of here.
Yeah. No, so highlight. So keep on highlighting.
Okay.
From there over. Yeah. When that runs, what is this inside of that function?
This is that's a good question. Is it because I've already set it to bind? Oh, is it app?
Why? What case are we talking about?
I'm talking about case 5 because it's in a callback function.
Okay, can you open the cheat sheet?
Yeah.
Can you be more specific within case 5?
Yeah. Let's see. I'm not sure about this one actually.
Okay, well, how about let's go through process of elimination.
Okay.
So let's look at, is it case 1?
No.
All right, let's go to 2. Is it called as a method?
No.
All right.
Constructor. New object created. No.
Nope. So through process of elimination.
Case 4.
Yep, it's case 4. Well, so
Okay.
a pretty good hint is that it uses bind. So whenever you use bind, it's
right. Got it. Okay.
Okay. So go back to the code.
Let's see.
Let's pretend that take your cursor and can you just hit the right arrow? Oh, just click out of that. Okay, so just go up. No, just take your cursor and hit the up arrow. Can you scroll back to bind events? Yeah. No, down. So hit down once, one more, and go to the right 1, 2, 3 times. Okay. Now hit delete until you delete the period. You still need the parentheses. Okay. So scroll up a little bit so you can see a little bit more. So we can see the entire bind events method. Okay, so if we made this modification, what will be this inside of this dot create when it runs on a key up event?
I think with jQuery, this will be the DOM element, right?
Can you verify that and show me?
Yeah, I think it'll be the input new to do. Let's see, refresh this. Let's take that off.
So you'll need to strategically put the breakpoint in the right spot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, there it is. That's. Yeah, so it says this is input new to do.
Perfect. How do you think jQuery is doing that? What method do you think they're using to make this equal to the new to do? I guess that's more you'd have to make a guess and look at the source code to verify. But so you just ignore that, I guess. But that's something you could look at if you wanted to.
I mean, I would guess that they were. Let's see.
Yeah, you'd have to look at the source code to answer that question. There are most likely they're also using case 4, though.
What?
Most likely they're also using case 4. And I'm saying like inside of the jQuery source code, they're probably using case 4.
Oh,
but I'd have to read the source to verify. So don't worry about that. Okay. Well, go back to the code. Good job so far. You can fix or undo the change so it doesn't break. Well, that pretty much handles everything in bind events. So let's scroll down, look at render. Pretty much the same thing here. It's just going to be the left of the dot again. Scroll down. So scroll down to 100s at the top.
Okay.
Yeah, everything else is pretty much just repetitive.
Okay.
There's nothing else really interesting. Scroll down, so get index from L's at the top. Scroll down, so toggles at the top. Scroll down, so updates at the top.
That's it.
That's it. All right, well, do you see how the other ones are kind of just like, I mean, like destroys left of the dot, so you just look at where destroy is called.
Right.
And it's kind of the same. There's nothing else really interesting left to look at. You kind of looked at all the various scenarios already.
Yeah. No, that was really exciting for me to go through with those and have you work through that with me. Thank you so much.
Oh, I do have one last question.
Yeah.
Just scroll all the way to the top again. What is this inside of line 4? Like at line 4, what is this?
Oh. So is anything being, I guess jQuery is being called.
Well, so what I'd like you to do is have a hypothesis around what it would be, and then we'll kind of decide on what your hypothesis is, finalize your hypothesis, and then verify it using the debugger and find out what it actually is.
Okay. Can I play around with that later?
You can just go. Just do it now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. My hypothesis is that it is going to be the jQuery framework, but I don't know. So I'll test it out, I guess. And take this breakpoint off. Oops. Only let me do line 5, so.
Same. Yep. It's equivalent.
Hold on, let me just look at it one more time. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. So what was your hypothesis?
I think it's the global jQuery framework.
You mean like jQuery?
Yeah, jQuery.
Okay, well, let's verify. Can you find out what it is?
Yeah. How would I go about this? Getting that to activate.
What do you think? Well, when this file loads, that code will run.
Oh, refresh.
Right? Yep. All right, so what's this?
Oh, the document.
Document. So jQuery does something interesting. You can read the documentation to find out more about this behavior, but it tries to always make this an element And so if you call it on a jQuery wrapped element like we do in bind events, then it will try to refer to the element that the event was attached to. If you just kind of run a function, a callback function through jQuery, like we're doing in line 2, you can kind of notice we're just giving jQuery function. So we have all of our code inside a callback function, and we're just passing it to jQuery. If you don't specify any element as context, then it'll by default just send this to the document, which is, I don't know, maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not, but that's what it does. I haven't looked at the jQuery source to tell you exactly how they do it, but based on the fact that this inside of all these jQuery, inside of functions run by jQuery are typically elements, and it looks like it could be a bunch of different elements, I'm guessing they're probably using bind or apply or call, something like that.
Okay.
So that it, because it varies so much, they're probably using something like case 4, because that gives you a lot of flexibility to change this value.
Okay. Would you recommend just like printing out the actual understanding this in all the cases and just like having it next to it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think while you're learning, you should probably have it out. There's no reason to like memorize it, because the memorization is not the hard part. The hard part is applying it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you spend your energy memorizing it, you're spending your energy on not the hard part.
Yeah.
It's actually harder to just have it printed out and then apply it.
Agreed.
Yep. And also try to like really break the examples and play, experiment the hell out of the examples.
Okay.
In the cheat sheet, because everything you see is going to be some twist on these kind of foundational. And if you look at each one, they're quite simple, but you'll notice like identifying them in a larger code base can be challenging. But at the end of the day, it gets distilled down to these very simple cases that are disguised.
Yeah, that's so true. Very true. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good work. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks.
That was great.
I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay, well, we're at time, so we're at the end of the hour. So I will stop the broadcast. As usual, I'll stick around for another 20 minutes after the broadcast ends to have a kind of casual discussion about whatever you'll want to talk about. If you want to join that, then you'll need to call in, and you'll need to click the link in the document. That document is linked in the YouTube live stream description if you are not there right now. So that's it. So I'm going to end the broadcast. Thank you all for joining, and hope to see you next week too. If you have any feedback or anything, please let me know. It could be about the office hours sessions or about the lessons. I always want to know how I can improve and get better, especially if I suck at certain things. So let me know. You can always email me, Gordon@watchingcode.com. All right. Thank you.